I've been in your waters. I'm looking for sure. I've never been so close before.
All right, welcome back. This is the Built by Vitality podcast. My name is Steve Pinkerton. As always, I'm sitting next to
Philip Lewis.
and we have the beautiful Corey Cooper with us today. And we are off-site today.
Yep, we're in the woods.
In the middle of the woods.
Yep.
I had Philip
We found these chairs.
just found a spot in the middle of the woods. So
That's
we
right.
came out here.
We hiked back here.
Yeah.
Corey hiked us in, which we're going to talk about. On today's episode, we're going to talk a lot about nature. We're going to talk a lot about Corey, who we had to kind of twist her arm to come on here.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She's kind of I wouldn't say a private person, but she doesn't love talking about herself. But I think she's so interesting
Yeah.
and unique. I think it'd be crazy not to have her on here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna dive in. She is an amazing massage therapist. She's been in Vitality since you opened. Right when we opened.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was delayed. I think I had moved in April.
April of 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's been there over 5 years. So in addition to that, she trains a ton. She does all kinds of stuff. When you get a new iMac computer and you see, sometimes you can go and find the screensavers.
Yeah.
The backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes when I look at Corey's Instagram, like maybe that's what she's secretly doing. She's going out trying to find the background photos for the Apple.
She might be taking them for Apple.
Yeah. So, because I mean, I've seen her just recently. You were in Portland.
I was out in Oregon.
In Oregon. And then everywhere. And when you talk about all this stuff, getting outdoors, she is always. She lives and breathes it, and I think that's a big part of who she is. So, before we get into that part, why don't you tell us how in the world? I'm always intrigued by how people ended up doing what they're doing, whether it's massage therapy or like Steve the other week we talked about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find yourself doing massage therapy? Is this something you have been doing, off and on for a long time, or what?
So I've been doing massage, since 2011.
Oh wow!
So, and I don't know why. I mean, I honestly don't know why I chose massage therapy. I was in corporate at the time, and I had just moved down here, and the economy was kind of crashing at that point, and I was working remote, and I think I just was looking for a second job, honestly, because I just bought a house, and I think I was just nervous about if that company started cutting jobs, if I would get if my job would be cut. So
what were you doing?
I worked for a company it was a financial industry company, and we did software for basically it was check processing at the time.
Oh, okay.
A long time ago when people actually still wrote checks. So it was a financial institution with banking software, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, so I wanted to learn something. I was really interested in about the body, and I wanted a second job, and I didn't want to, work retail or something like that. I really wanted to learn something, but I didn't want to go back to college either. So, I just thought, I don't know, massage came up because it kind of hit all of those different areas, and I knew I could have my own business if I wanted to, even just seeing people out of my house for some extra money. I knew I could work weekends. So I drove down to school in Charlotte, and I literally just signed up and went to school.
What was the school like? How long was it?
I did, I think it was 500 hours. So I basically did night school. So I still continued my full-time job, and then I did massage 5 days a week. I think it was 30 hours a week for 6 months.
Wow. 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
After working all day.
Yeah,
right?
I worked from home. So I worked till 4 o'clock, and then I got ready and I drove down to Charlotte and went to school. And so I think once I graduated, I got a job with my chiropractor. And
Hoctor Chiropractic.
Hoctor.
Yep. Okay.
So he was kind of just starting out, and I worked on Saturdays with him like for a full year, and I had a chair massage. I didn't have a room. I literally had a chair, and every single person that came to see us got 15 minutes of soft tissue work, and I can't believe that I worked that long on using a chair massage.
Wow.
Yeah, and after a year of doing that, he's like, we are killing it. Like, people love you. I want you full time. So, I mean, it took me, I had a 6 months vacation. I had 401k. I had like all of the benefits. I was making good money. I had commission, all of the things that are supposed to keep you at a position because it's really good and you're successful. But I hated my job.
Yeah.
Like, I hated my job. And so, it was really scary because I had a mortgage. I had a lot of bills. And taking that pay cut was going to be, challenging. And I almost didn't do it. I had that mentality that I have to stay here because I have to pay my bills. I need the money. I need the health insurance. I need the vacation's nice. But it just came to one day. I'm just like, I can't do it anymore. I want to do massage because I loved doing it. It was fun. I couldn't believe he was paying me to do that every weekend.
Yeah.
So it just happened one day. I'm like, I'm done. I quit. And that was it.
Philip and I talk about that a lot with stability and how many people get sucked into a job they don't enjoy doing, but they just, I don't want to say they're afraid to leave, but that's a fear has a lot to do with it. They're just, the unknown scares them. And when you do something different, when you decide that you're going to go from the finance business, corporate America, to massage therapy, I would imagine a lot of people that you talk to would say, gosh, Corey, you're crazy. You tell them, I've got all these benefits. Why in the world would you leave? Well, the bottom line is, if you're not happy, I legitimately cannot fathom waking up on Monday morning and dreading going to work.
Yeah.
It would be that would be my worst nightmare. And I think that most people just accept that because they're like, well,
that's what you do.
I have to pay for my mortgage. I have to sacrifice this for my family. But the reality is, I would love to see the difference between your personality 10 years ago, working the job that you didn't enjoy, that you hated. Well, I shouldn't say hated, but you didn't enjoy it.
Yes.
Versus now, I would imagine that you're way happier. You're way, it's more fun to be around you now that you're doing something you love. And people don't,
For sure.
People don't look at that and say, they look at like they're sacrificing because of their family, because they have to provide. But what they're really doing is they're giving a lesser version of themselves to those around them, and it's just it's a tough situation. So
statistically, I think we've talked about before, on Sundays, people that dread going to work, Sunday afternoon it kind of sets in, and they're like, okay, they're just stressing out, they're anxious already, and then the majority of, they say in America, the majority of heart attacks happen Monday mornings, mid-morning. It just sets in Sunday, Monday they're heading there, stress, life, whatever, they're unhappy, and it just hits.
So you make the transition to full-time. Now, are you doing this full-time at the chiropractic office? Is there any other location that you're working out of?
Yeah, at that time I just worked there.
Okay. And how long did that go?
Until
2016.
Until I came to Vitality, I just, I knew you then a little bit, and I knew you were building that, and because I remember seeing the space for the first time. There was no drywall up or anything like that. But yeah, I knew it was going to be a really good opportunity, because I at Hoctor's, like, we worked a lot with athletes. We worked a lot with CrossFit people. I was sort of in that environment, and I knew that those were the people I wanted to work with, or the more active lifestyle people. So I knew that's what you were going to be bringing into that space. So, I was really nervous about going out on my own, but I just felt like it was time that I really wanted to kind of change up what I was doing. And it just makes sense for massage therapists to eventually do their own thing. It really does.
It's tough when you look at from the business perspective of it. At least when I first were talking to you about the space, it would be challenging for me to think that I was going to go do massage therapy somewhere and then have to give up a percentage of that just because of, and I get how the whole thing works. It has to go that way, but it makes so much more sense to do it this way, in my opinion, where you control your schedule, you control your clients, and, you can really decide. And I'm sure there's been seasons to where over the last 5 years, you've been really busy at times because you're like, okay, well, I want to work a little bit more longer hours this month or whatever. And then I'm sure there's times where you've peeled back and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm okay. I can manage fewer clients this month because I want to do some other things. And you've got this amazing flexibility that very few people experience. And once you experience it, I think it'd be very hard to give that up. Because now you've got this autonomy to where, hey, if you want to go backpacking, cool. You just plan your schedule around it.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard for, once I started there, I was still at the chiropractor a little bit. Like I was sort of trying to transition because I didn't have any clients. I didn't have a client base really when I came to Vitality. So at one point I was working 3 jobs and I was sometimes working all 3 of those jobs in one day. I was going down to South End. I was working in Cornelius. I was working at MySpace, and I did that for a year. But, I think it was just necessary because I knew I was building the clientele. I just didn't have what I needed. And I had a house and I was living in a certain way that I still was sort of living the way I did when I had that corporate job and I was making a lot more money then. So I think that played into it a little bit too. But once I started really kind of feeling comfortable being booked, like pretty much every week, and it sometimes would happen at the last minute where I might, I'd look at my week ahead and be like, I don't really have a lot of people on my schedule. And then it would come to that week and I would be full. And so that, once that started happening, I started feeling a little bit more ease where I could back off those other jobs. And so I slowly did that. And honestly, since then, I haven't really had a time where it slowed down. It's just continuing to be like more and more and more. And now I think I'm booked out like right now, like 3.5 weeks, I think, in advance. And yeah, it does. I think I work really hard, and I think I've worked really hard to get to this point, and I'm still, for the most part, working 6 days a week. And then, like this last month, I felt like I don't want to get in that mindset of having to work and not play and not have fun and not enjoy things outside of that. Even I love what I'm doing and I love my clients. I really do. I don't have that Monday morning feeling ever. So I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, I feel really good about where I'm at. And so I'm going to take the time and I'm going to do these things. And I have the opportunity, the flexibility, I still work hard when I'm there. But I'm trying to give myself each month, whether it's, a week or at least a few days every month where I go and I do something.
That's the other reason why people don't make this leap is they're not willing to put in that initial upfront work where people will see you now and they'll say, gosh, it must be nice to have 3 weeks out booked. If I could do that, I'd probably do what Corey's doing too. But what they don't understand, or they do understand they're not willing to do that, is they're not willing to build that and how long it takes to build that and to do the 3 locations that you were trying to mess around and get all this stuff because you had to, because that's how you grow a business. And especially with you've done this in a way where it's almost exclusively word of mouth. As much as we can post on social media or whatever, the reality is Philip's going to go get a massage. He's going to talk to 15 people and say, man, someone's going to say, gosh, my neck. And he's like, you got to go see Corey. What are you doing? And people start to see that and say those things. And now everybody knows referrals, word of mouth referrals are the only way to go, and especially in a service business like massage therapy. So for you, I would imagine it's just going to continue to get this way and continue to get. And now I would bet that your biggest issue is going to be that you're 3 weeks out. I mean, that's going to turn into, it's the best thing in the world, but it's going to turn into, man, 3 weeks that's a long time to wait.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of the beast. It's like, you know, hiring a subcontractor. If everybody's super busy and somebody's got an availability tomorrow, I don't know if I want that person that doesn't have a little bit of an issue. So when you see that, it's also that scarcity concept of if you're talking to Corey and she's like, I can get you in 3 weeks, you're like, golly,
dang, my neck hurts now.
I better hurry up and put my name down here, or I'm gonna have to wait a month. So that's a cool. And I remember talking to you as you were getting in there, and it was nerve-wracking in the beginning because you were trying to build that thing, and you're like, man, I remember when you were posting on Saturdays or Sundays, you'd post your availability for the week. Those posts went away.
I never post anymore.
Not anymore. You'll never see
if
it.
I post, it'll be like, hey, they had a cancellation or last minute.
Yeah.
So talk to me about so I think it's great when you try and find, that's the hardest thing is the balance, and we've talked about that before on these podcasts about, there really isn't a balance. When you're a small business owner, it's not a balance. It's you finding a time that you think is necessary to get away from the business. And you've said, hey, I want to do that every week. Have you always sought nature out as a way to kind of decompress and a way to kind of center yourself back from everything?
Mm-mm. I mean, growing up, we camped all the time, and that was what our family did. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't go on vacations, really. Like, maybe we drove to Florida once in a Ford Fairmont station wagon.
With the backwards facing seats or no?
No, I don't think so. So that was what we did. We, went to the north, we went up north, up north, right? So I feel like I just had a Wisconsin accent there.
I'll take
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, so we did that, and I've always enjoyed that. And it's funny because I came down here partly because I wanted to get away from that, like, small town. I wanted the city and the opportunity and that sort of thing. And now it's funny because when we talk about me starting my business, it's kind of where it came back for me. Because I was I wouldn't say it was a bad place because I made all of those choices to put myself in that position of quitting a job. But, financially it was really hard because I was still having to live in a way that I was, with that salary of the corporate. And now I took half of that, and I'm trying to live that way and start a business. And so it was stressful, to say the least. And it was really, really difficult. So I think what had happened for me is I was just trying to find, I grew up Catholic, and that I knew I was looking for something bigger than me for that faith, or that help me through this kind of a thing. And that didn't, the whole man in the sky thing didn't make sense to me. So I was that's kind of where it started for me is, there's something bigger than me. And that's where I kind of started this whole journey. And nature had a lot to do with that because I felt like going into nature, I found some sort of peace from what was going on, the chaos I felt in my life at that time. So that's kind of when it started. But honestly, I didn't have time during those first 3 years. I just worked all the time. Sometimes I was working 4 or 5 weeks at a time without a day off. And then I remember the first time I went to the mountains, I took 2 days off, and I was so happy that I had 2 days off in a row. And that was the first time I really went to the mountains here. And I just remembered, okay, this is what feels good to me. So it really wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years ago where I started to really go in nature. And I think too, part of it was I was by myself, and I had never really done that by myself. So I think there was a part of me that was scared and nervous about doing something like that, like going hiking by myself or staying in a cabin or camping in the woods by myself. I was really like hesitant about that.
And
I'm
you're probably-
I'm not going to wait around for
Yeah.
anybody. I want to do it, so I'm going to do it.
You
And
probably had a lot of people tell you too, like, hey, you're going to go by yourself, so you got that in your head too. Like everybody you're telling what you're about to do is like, you better be careful. Like
a lot of people project their fears onto you.
yeah,
Yeah. And they're also, it's an envy thing where they're envious that you get to go do that, so they don't want you to experience that if they can't, you know. And I think it, you know, when you look around at any time now is a perfect example with the pandemic, but you look at any time, there's so much noise and chaos and things that are going on, and we become so accustomed to it, we forget that to get out in nature where it's quiet, where there's not TVs, where there's not a stupid cell phone that has the little dings that every time, I mean, you know, I finally about 6 months ago turned my notifications off because it was so frustrating. Because what do? You hear some stupid sound on your phone, and what do? You pick it up, and you're like, oh, I wonder who texted me. Oh, and then most likely it's something that's going to stress you out one way or the other, and you just constantly live in this hamster wheel, and you get further and further away from nature. Now all of a sudden, you know, everybody lives in the city, or they live somewhere where they don't. There is no nature, and I think that you lose your ability to get out and just have it be quiet. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that probably is one of the best things that you experience when you get out and you hike. And how do you pick where you go? I mean, is it just like a bucket list type of thing where you say, okay, how do you end up out in Oregon?
Well, initially I was kind of planning a different hike for this summer with a friend of mine, and that scheduling conflict didn't really work. So I knew I wanted to do something after Costa Rica, which we can talk about if you want. Mm. I wanted something where I could like process some things from that trip, and I think I just wanted to see something different than the North Carolina mountains. I wanted to see some big mountains.
And how was Oregon?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about, like, someone asked me the other day, like, you know, did it rain all the time? And I hadn't really thought about that, because I guess it rains a lot out there. But I mean, I had amazing weather. Wow. It was so perfect.
Even if it had rained, you'd have probably still enjoyed it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I didn't really have much of a plan going out there. I did, you know, I was prepared, like, with maps, and I had GPS stuff, and, you know, I did a fair amount of research and geeked out on some YouTube videos of the trail I was on and stuff. But for the most part, it didn't happen the way that I had planned it, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So I think once you do it enough, I'm just very comfortable. So this trail in particular had some river crossings that were, I was really a little bit nervous, a lot nervous about. I'm just not, I have no experience crossing like these raging glacial rivers. So, and some of them, apparently, were like chest high, and, I don't have
like
experience
over Philip's head.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't know. Some of the
doggy paddling across there, man. Like Corey will go around. It's in somewhere.
Well, and two, like, I think getting down into some of those rivers were, and I don't know, there's probably a ton of fear mongering in some of the, trail apps that I use, but I think getting down into the canyon and crossing the river and trying to get back up through, I think some of them were just a little sketchy. And I was a little bit uncertain about my abilities to be able to do that by myself. So I wasn't sure if I was going to do that or not. And ultimately, I didn't end up on that side of the mountain because it was just so beautiful where I was. I didn't really want to leave. So, and it was perfect. I loved it. And at first I was a little bit like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, what are people going to think? Like, I didn't hike the whole trail, or I didn't, do this or that. I'm like, I don't really care. Like, this is my trip. It's my experience, and this is what I want to do. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And
do you think that comes back to that? We talked about this the other day. You talk about the programming that we won't get too deep into that, but it's interesting that our brains are wired in a way. You're in the middle of nature, and our thought process, it's our unconscious thought process. I mean, you're not thinking that way, other than the fact that your brain is programmed to think, I wonder what someone's going to think of me if I don't do this whole trail. And it's funny how we all would have those thoughts. It's just crazy how our brains work to process it that way. And that just goes to show you how important it is to get out there and do stuff like that. And I'm a perfect example. I've been at Vitality running this thing for 12 years, and I've pushed off so many things because I just haven't had time, or I've been busy, or, I find myself, knee deep in another project that, I don't know. And I think at some point you have to, it's like the same thing we talk about. There's never a good time to start a fitness program. Mm-hmm. There's probably never a good time to start to say, you know what, I'm gonna plan 3 trips out next year, and they're gonna be a 2-day, a 3-day, and then a 5-day. And like you said, the first one will probably be a little challenging because you're trying to figure things out, and the self-confidence. And then the second one will be a little easier to leave, and whatever. But unless you start, you'll never do it. And the longer you put it off, the harder it is to pull the trigger to go. So when you were talking about this, I had already said, man, Philip and I are absolutely going to do some type of a hiking trip, probably Corey as our guide. Man, and it's going to be amazing.
We're sharing a tent.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah. We're sharing a sleeping bag.
I'm Big Spoon.
Oh, whatever. and I think that, if you can't do that, I think you lose that balance.
And I don't think you have to plan like an elaborate trip or even overnight. I think just doing this, sitting out here and just being quiet and absorbing the energy and not having your phone, like that's good. You're gonna get a lot from that. Like for me, even this week, I just was getting that itch, and like I have to sleep in my tent. Like I want to be outside, and I didn't have anything planned. I literally have Sunday off, and I come into work at 4:00 on Monday. So I'm gonna go after work. I'm gonna drive up to the mountains on Saturday night and just car camp and spend all Sunday there and come home Monday morning. And I just, decided at last minute. It's easy. You don't have to
to book an Airbnb, a hotel, all that. You just go.
Yeah. And also, like, I've designed my life around that too. Like, I don't have kids, and I don't have, I have lived very simply, and so I don't really have a lot of responsibilities at home. I don't have a yard to keep up with or anything like that. So for me, if I just want to go, I just go, and it's a little bit easier, I think.
So one thing we wanted to talk about briefly, or as deep as we want to get into it, it was very intriguing to me. Corey, I saw some pictures of Corey in Costa Rica, and I was like, God, wow, Costa Rica, I've heard that is like the most amazing place ever. I think my little brother had been to Costa Rica, and he said, man, if you ever get a chance to go to Costa Rica, you should go. And lo and behold, Corey's in Costa Rica, and she is at Ayahuasca. And that is a retreat. Well,
I went to a retreat that had it where I drank ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is the medicine. Ayahuasca is the medicine, and the purpose of the trip to Costa Rica was the place that you went was a specific. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so now how did you get into that? Well, how did that come about? So I think I first heard about ayahuasca probably 10 years ago on Joe Rogan. Okay. But I was still in that very programmed mindset that that's a psychedelic, that's a drug, that's bad. It just triggered me that, and then, again, like I said, all of it sort of, when I was starting this whole journey of, whatever you want to call it, self-healing or expansion or spirituality, whatever. That was one of the first things that came up for me again. And I'm like, I remember hearing about this. And a lot of people that I was listening to at the time through podcasts and stuff were doing these ayahuasca journeys. And it was just really, I don't know if appealing's the right word, but I was just really intrigued by it. That whole, like, accessing that subconscious, because at the time I knew that I had a lot of programming that I wanted to I wanted to change. Right?
Can you tell us a difference for those that aren't familiar? Because Philip and I aren't super familiar with this, but what is the difference between like ayahuasca is what you drink? How does that compare to psychedelics like mushrooms or something like that? Is it the same, similar?
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with anything other than ayahuasca, but ayahuasca is it's a vine. I think it's a vine of the ayahuasca plant and the leaf of the chacruna plant. So I think, and I'm not certain if that's 100% right, but I think that is. And they make a brew out of it, and it's tradition. It's an Amazonian plant.
Okay.
And it's been used in traditional Amazonian ceremonies for forever.
Okay.
I think even, maybe even, some kids start using ayahuasca at a very young age there. So that's where, it's an indigenous plant to the Amazon.
Okay.
So, like I said, I don't have experience with other psychedelics. And I don't even really like calling it that, because to me it's medicine. It's true medicine. But I've heard that it's a little bit more intense than the psilocybin mushroom.
Oh, okay.
Like mushrooms, I think, are a little bit more gentler,
okay.
From what people have said.
Okay.
And yeah, as far as how it compares to anything else, I don't. But it is a psychoactive, plant, and it does contain DFT.
So when you ingest this,
Mm-hmm.
how would you describe that experience?
So it's done in a very traditional setting. So this is the second time that I've drank. I drank a couple years ago in the States, but I did that with the Native American church. So the two ceremonies were completely different. The traditions are different. The shamans are different. So in Costa Rica, I worked with Shipibo shamans, which are probably the most well-known and of the Amazon. They're the most well-known shaman tribe. I don't know if that's the right way to explain it, but so the ceremony is very traditional, and you sit in a maloka, and like I said, they brew the plant in the leaf, or the vine in the leaf, and it creates like a tea or brew that you drink.
What's the maloka? Is that like a teepee or like a round?
Yeah, it's a round thatched hut. It's very large. It's kind of open air. But yeah, and that has a lot. And again, I don't know if I'm speaking in the right terms here, but I think the maloka is designed for the energy to be able to be filtered up and out through the ceiling. So it's all circular.
Okay.
So we work with very traditional Shipibo healers.
How many are there with you?
So there are two healers. There's in this particular ceremony, there was a husband and wife, maestros, and I believe maestro, I think this is right, where he had spent 7 years in the jungle by himself, and that's traditionally that's what they do. They call it a dieta. So the shamans will the dieta can be 6 months or 12 months or years long, where they go and they work with a specific plant. And they usually have their own teacher, so the teacher can dictate what plant they're going to be working with during their dieta. So it might not always be ayahuasca. It could be something else. And they basically, have a very limited diet. I mean, they might be fasting. They might have, maybe one meal a day. And that they're really sitting in solitude. And wow. It's kind of how they, become healers. And so we had two of these healers sitting with us. And then there were some other facilitators from Soltara, which is the name of the place that I was at. Yeah, and it's, I don't know if you want all the details of the ceremony, because it's pretty, it's really, it's pretty remarkable.
And can you take that stuff? How long does it take? Like, you're like, I'm not really feeling nothing. Bam. Okay, there it is. Like, how long does it take to kick in after you do it?
Yeah. So once you drink, it's usually about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. And then, both the maestros sing, and they're called Icaros, which is, and so the maestros are really everybody in the Maloka drinks. Everyone drinks to connect with the medicine. So even the facilitators and maestros are all drinking. But they're really the middle person between the spirit world and, this dimension or this realm. So they work with energies, and their Icaros, which are the spirit songs that they sing, is what's kind of managing that energy in the room.
How long will you experience this? How long will you be in that?
So we typically drank, I think, around 7:30 at night by the time the medicine kicks in, and we were done with the ceremony around 2 in the morning. So it's a good 5 or 6 hours
that you feel that
you're
for 5
feeling
or
it.
6.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like? What do you feel coming off of it? Like the next morning when you wake up?
Well, I mean, it's just hard. Like I don't know if you really can even process it. It's for me, it just, so what the medicine does is and it can be different for everyone, but generally it's really providing a mirror to see all of your subconscious patterns. And it makes you aware of those. Sometimes it could be reliving, memories that you have suppressed because they were very traumatic. And it'll bring those to light so that you can process them. And it's so healing. It's such an intelligent medicine with such wisdom that it gives you exactly what you need. You may not even know what you need, but it's going to give you what you need. And generally, like, you're going in with a very strong intention. It's a big part of drinking is having an intention of, what do you want to heal? What do you want to work on? What do you want to be shown? Those type of things. So, like, you get, at least for me, my experience was I get a lot. Like, it's hard. It is not easy. You have a lot of, I have had a lot of anxiety. It's just, you just get pictures and visions, and the visions aren't necessarily something you see. It could be a feeling. It could be just a knowing. It could be something that you see. And you get them.
It's like a slideshow or something, kind of, right?
And
But
it's
you
like,
don't really
hard,
see it.
Yeah, and it's hard to focus because you're like, wait, what was that? What was that? That was just a memory. What was that? And then it's gone. So it takes a lot of concentration. At least that was my experience with it. And there's a lot of purging. There's a lot of purging in different ways.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That should be our camping trip.
Oh man, listen to me. I can barely handle you without psychedelics, let alone with them. Medicine. Is this something that you think you do again?
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go back in February.
To Costa Rica. They're making a big push. I see this a lot with Tim Ferriss, who is, there's a ton of research on psychedelics. And now I don't know if there's now legalized treatment plans with them, but there's something that's coming, whether people are ready for it or not. And I think that I've always been interested in that, but to me, I would only want to do it like Corey has done it in a
not somebody in an alleyway in Uptown Charlotte gave it to you.
I don't want Philip and me to be sitting in the podcast room figuring out how we're gonna
drink this stuff.
I mean, the set, and I think it's very cliche in that community, like the set and setting are so important, but I can attest to the ceremony that I did in the States. I'm not saying I wish I hadn't done it, because I'm glad I had that experience, but it was nothing like going to Soltara. I mean, because integration of what you were shown or what you experienced is so important. It's like it's more important than drinking, I think, and I didn't get that in the States. So that's such an important part of it, that I think you want to be somewhere that, especially the first time that you're doing it, you want to kind of know what to expect. You want some guidance and some tools that you can use when you're in ceremony and you're having, like, you're panicking. You want some tools that you can, just why, what's that? Asking, like, why am I why am I so nervous? Like, where is that coming from? Why do I have that feeling? So the facilitators there are so amazing that they kind of work, through some of those things with you. And it's just such a healing environment from the beautiful place that that you're surrounded, all the nature you're surrounded with. The food was amazing and healthy and organic. And you definitely want to be in a safe place, because you're going to have to let your walls down. You're going to have to become vulnerable, because it's just what happens. The medicine's going to make you do that.
Oh, seems like we do that stuff all the time. Maybe we just got to add it to the list. We do working out in the gym, uncomfortable. Jiu-jitsu's coming, uncomfortable.
But would you say, Corey, that uncomfortable and vulnerable are two different things?
Yeah.
I think that those are two. I am not somebody that would seek out vulnerability.
You'd rather be uncomfortable.
So
the
first thing that we did when we got the first morning that we were there at 7 a.m., we had what was called a vomitivo.
Oh boy.
I have a feeling I don't speak Costa Rican.
I know what it is, but I can't wait till you hear it.
So I'm really glad that we did this, because again, when I did my ceremonies in the States, I didn't know that it was going to be this way for me, but when I was in ceremony, I was self-conscious about throwing up. And so I didn't allow myself to do that. And that's just holding in so much energy. So what we did at Soltara was at 7 a.m. on Monday morning, we were outside the Moloka, and they had 5-gallon buckets full of lemongrass tea. And they had 4 stations set up, and you had to I wouldn't say you chugged it, but you had to drink as much of that lemongrass tea until you threw up. And they would just keep, the glass was like this, and they kept filling it up, and you drank. I think I drank 5 or 6 of them.
Did it taste good?
It wasn't bad, but I would never drink it again.
Yeah.
So like Lipton sweet tea,
I have a little bit of PTSD from that.
Now, when you say when you threw up, just a one-time.
You're purging in front of everyone, and
everybody's yakking just outside the thing.
Yeah, there was 4 people yakking at a time, and it was sort of fun in a way. We kind of you're just cheering people on. And if you didn't puke enough, they would keep filling up your glass, because they really wanted you to empty yourself. And for me, it was so helpful because I got that over with. So when I got to ceremony, I was just like, let me throw up, because I knew I just wanted that. Because it's really interesting so you have the maestro sings in Icaros to each person individually. And so at the point that he comes to you, you sit at the edge of the mat, and he's singing a song to you. And it's so cool, because you don't know the words of the song because it's in their language. But it's almost as if my spirit recognized the words. Like I could close my eyes and almost knew the words to the song, even though I didn't recognize the language. And what he's doing is really pulling that energy, that negative energy out of you, and you can feel it. So a lot of times when he would sing to me, I would just bawl, I would just sob, and I would be fine until he came and sat and started singing to me, and I would just start sobbing. And then I, the second night I purged when he was singing to me, and it's almost like it's not like when you're sick and you feel like you have to get sick. It's almost like you just feel the energy coming up, and you can't do anything other than just throw up. So anyway, the vomiting was really helpful for me, because you get that vulnerability over with, because you have to do it.
You're throwing up in front of people like you
yeah.
just
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good thing, because I think a lot of people have a little bit of they're a little bit self-conscious about that.
I think a lot of people have that.
Mm-hmm.
throwing up and be like, oh.
And if it's not, and maybe they don't have that, but okay, fine. Maybe I'd be totally fine with throwing up in front of people. Yeah. But as I sit here and you say that, if I'm in body sobs, that would be a vulnerability that I don't know that would be a very tough thing for me to do in front of people.
I couldn't imagine you just bent over sobbing. I'm like, you all right, big guy?
So you think about that, and that vulnerability is going to come out in some way, I'm sure. Where
in ceremony, you don't necessarily you're really kind of wrapped up in what's going on in your little world or dimension, whatever dimension you're in. But it can feel a little bit chaotic at times because both the maestros are singing. And then you have, you could have multiple people purging, and you have someone crying and someone laughing and someone sighing, and there's a lot of energies going on. So you don't necessarily know what someone across the room is doing,
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I would recognize someone who was throwing up. Like, I don't know. It's just like I knew where that person was sitting. So I, like, I know that, I'm so happy for him. Like, that would be going through my mind. Like, I could hear that person throwing up. I'm like, I feel so, happy for him that he's letting that energy out, So it's just people hold space for you there. It's like you meet these people and then the next day you want to hug them and tell them that you love them. So your walls come down, and I'm not saying this for everyone. I think some people probably hold on to that a little bit more, but in my experience with that group, like, people's walls came down. We held space for everyone. A lot of people shared, some really hard things in our, the last day that we were there. And you accept people. And that was, like, the most beautiful thing about it. It's like, you're eating with these people and, having meals with them, and you're in this beautiful setting, and you just feel like you can be yourself, and that's all that mattered,
You sure would think that that's probably what everybody needs right now, because the last thing that we are right now is accepting of anybody. Mm-hmm. And you talk about putting walls up. All you hear about are walls because someone doesn't believe what I believe, and they don't want to be around me, and that's it's a very dangerous and lonely thing to get into. And now, maybe this is the answer for some of these people, is to go out and experience some of these things and understand what true acceptance is. And that's again, vulnerability, that would be, if you want to look at the biggest chink in my armor, it would be vulnerability. It would have to be. As you're sitting here explaining that, nothing gives me more anxiety than, like, okay, woo,
I'd be really happy for you, though, the next day. If you was walking around hugging people, telling them you love them, I'd be like, we broke through to him. Look at Steve. I would take photos everywhere.
Well, I think that's such a great thing about, doing something like this. I'm not saying it's definitely not for everyone, right? There's, there's a lot of people that just wouldn't, it's just not a good idea for, right? But I think, so much of why we're, like, afraid to be vulnerable is that, again, I think it all comes back to conditioning and things that, the way things are as a child, because if our parents were not connected to their selves, they can't connect to us, and then we can't connect to our true self. So you create all these barriers. You look for other people to validate you. You think that you're not worthy. And all of that comes, like, especially like unworthiness. That's where some of those things come from, is that you're afraid of what people think of you, right? Mm-hmm. You want to be accepted. And if you knew innately your worth as a divine being, if you want to call it that, you wouldn't care what other people think. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what happens here is you get a chance to kind of remember who you are, like, at your essence. The medicine kind of reminds you of that. And so you start to, once you feel some acceptance for yourself, and then you automatically are feeling that for other people, because you don't have those walls anymore. You don't have that barrier to love or whatever it is. I remember after the first night, I had a really amazing experience. Just like, I cried for 6 hours. I just cried during that ceremony, and mostly because I just felt so much gratitude and love. And I didn't really sleep much that whole week, and I was up early, and I walked down this trail and into the woods, and they had a bunch of hammocks hanging, and I just went to watch the sunrise, and I was journaling, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm so grounded, I'm so connected to myself and to these people, and I had monkeys in the trees, above me, and these birds and all kinds of sounds, and I could hear the ocean, and we were fed like this amazing organic food that was fresh and wonderful, and I ate meals with people, which I've been by myself for a long time. It's been a long time since I had, a meal with someone. And so having every single meal at this beautiful place with these people that, I felt like so connected to, I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is how the world is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it just like, it's hard. It was hard to leave that because it felt so good, Do you think it made you better, or will make you better at your job, just being able to connect in a way and let go of some of those things? Yeah, for sure, because I'm coming back to who I am. And once I remember that, and it's not that, I think sometimes we think we're bad because we're judging people or we're doing this or doing that. And it's not us, it's our programs. And so we have to change the programs. And once you start changing the programs, I think it softens you. And it just allows you to, take anything personally for someone. If someone perceives you a certain way, that's just their story of you. It's not your reality. And so you can stop really needing that validation or needing acceptance from people, because you accept yourself. And in that, you treat other people better, and you can connect with other people because you see who they really are too. So yeah, I think I've felt so much energy since I've gotten back, like on people, like working on people, physically feeling their energy. So I think I'm very open and very grounded in being able to do that. But yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that it's making me better in all parts of my life.
This is very, very interesting to me.
I really think that should be our camping trip.
Well, I think what I've decided as I was sitting here listening to Corey is I'm going to send you with Corey the first time.
Okay.
We'll video it, a little bit of it. We'll get,
I'll be in the tree with the monkeys and that stuff.
We'll see how it goes. And then maybe the second trip,
then you'll go.
I'll tag along if you make it.
Use me as a test dummy.
Yeah. I'm going to see how much, I want to see if I can get some hugs.
I'll do it.
That's
right.
So.
What if I come back and I'm mean? Because I'm usually really happy and nice. And what if I come back and I'm mean? I'm the opposite. Deep down inside, I'm really a mean person.
Someone
and
said that to me once. They're like, I'm so afraid to do it because what if it changes me in a bad way? I'm like,
what if it makes me mean?
It won't. It's a powerful medicine that is just loving. It's just love. So it's not going to change you for the worse.
And we've said it from day one, that's how this thing changes. That's how the world's going to change, is through love, is being kind to people and accepting people. And that's it. That's the gist of the whole fix, is
learning people have other views than you, and it's okay.
And just be kind and just understand that it's okay. Like Corey said, someone's view of me, that's a great way to look at it. Someone's view of me is just it's their view of my story. It doesn't make my reality. It just means that's how they perceive me. So this has been really, really good. But we usually plug whoever we're on here for their business, but I don't want to, because I don't want to wait longer than 3 weeks to see Corey. And the crazy thing is, you talk about being stuck in a program. Let me tell you my program. Corey's been in my building for 5 years. And I've probably had less than 8 massages from her, and she's 30 steps away. And I'm like, gosh, what am I doing? And I find myself like, gosh, I don't know if I can get away for 60 minutes. And finally, I'm just going to be done with it. I'm going to make it. I'm just going to make it work, because that's what I have to do. So anyway, Corey is not taking any new clients.
No.
She's booked out.
I want new clients.
Derek cannot. Derek will go in there for 2 hours.
What does Derek need 2 hours for?
He doesn't. So we're gonna help. We're gonna fix Corey's schedule we're gonna eliminate some people and put some new ones in there. But yes, we'll put the link to Corey's social pages on there and how to get signed up. If you have not had a massage from this woman, I am telling you now, mark it in your calendar, get in touch with her, and do it. It's unbelievable, and it's just, some people are made for. Some people have the perfect alignment of what their passion is with what their skill set is, and that is exactly what Corey's done. Corey's as passionate as you're going to find about massage, and her skill work or her skill set is just perfectly aligned with it. So, like I said, do it if you haven't. Corey, this has been awesome. Thank you for being on here. Until
Happy
next time.
to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, and this might be our new set.
10-4.
I think it should be.
We should
I do too.
Philip will sleep upstairs and just spend the night at the house, and we'll be good. So
We're not at a house, remember?
Oh, yeah, we're
we
in the
found these in the woods.
all right, guys. Until next time. This is the Built by Vitality podcast. Thanks for listening.